I was sleeping in the bed of my F-150 when Officer Valdez knocked on my window at 2 a.m. The sound jolted me awake, and for a second I forgot where I was. The Walmart parking lot. Tuesday night, or was it Wednesday morning now? When you're homeless, the days blur together like watercolors in the rain. "License and registration," he said, shining his flashlight through the fogged glass. I could see my breath in the cold Arizona desert air as I fumbled for my wallet. My back ached from sleeping on the metal truck bed with just a sleeping bag and an old moving blanket for comfort. This was my life now, at 49. Dale Hutchinson, former successful business owner, reduced to dodging police and parking violations. I handed over my documents, thinking it was just another ticket I couldn't afford to pay. The third one this week, maybe the fourth. Officer Valdez looked young, maybe 35, with kind eyes that seemed apologetic about waking me. He walked back to his patrol car, and I watched him in my side mirror, typing on his computer. Standard procedure. I'd been through this dance before, but something changed. I saw him lean forward, squinting at his screen. He typed something else, waited, then suddenly stood up straight. Even from 50 feet away, I could see his whole demeanor shift. He spoke into his radio, quick and urgent. Then he walked back to my truck, but this time his hand rested on his weapon. "Mr. Hutchinson, I need you to step out of the vehicle slowly," he said. His voice was different now. Careful, alert. "Keep your hands where I can see them." My heart started racing. "Officer, what's wrong? It's just a parking violation. I'll move the truck right now." "Sir, please step out of the vehicle." His flashlight wasn't aimed at my face anymore. It was aimed at my chest, tracking my every movement. I climbed out, my joints stiff from the cold, hands raised slightly. "What's going on?" Officer Valdez looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. It was fear mixed with confusion, like he'd stumbled onto something way above his pay grade. "Mr. Hutchinson, when I ran your license, something came up. There's a federal flag on your file from 1987. 1987? That's 37 years ago. I was 17 years old. He showed me his patrol car's computer screen, turning it so I could see. There it was, in red letters that seemed to pulse with urgency. Federal flag. Homeland Security notification required. Subject of interest. File date 8/15/1987. Homeland Security wants your exact location, he continued. They're sending someone now. Sir, I need you to sit on the curb and not move. My hands started trembling as I stared at that screen. The date suddenly clicked in my memory. August 15th, 1987. The day my Uncle Roy died in that car accident. The same uncle who'd left me his old Chevy truck, the truck I'd used to start my landscaping business. But Uncle Roy had been secretive about his work, always deflecting questions, with jokes about government pencil pushing. As I sat on that cold curb, watching Officer Valdez pace nervously while we waited for whoever was coming, one thought consumed me. What had Uncle Roy been involved in? And more importantly, why had my ex-father-in-law, Gordon Prewitt, seemed so satisfied when he learned about my connection to Roy at a family dinner years ago? Roy Hutchinson's nephew, he'd muttered to his son Travis when he thought I wasn't listening. That explains everything. 20 minutes later, a black Suburban with government plates pulled into the parking lot. No sirens, no dramatic entrance, just the quiet arrival of something serious. Agent Deborah Kincaid stepped out, her badge reflecting the streetlight as she approached. She was all business in her dark suit, even at 2 a.m. "Dale Hutchinson?" she asked, though she clearly already knew the answer. "Son of Leonard Hutchinson, nephew of Roy Hutchinson?" "Yes, ma'am." She studied me for a moment, this middle-aged man in rumpled clothes who'd been sleeping in his truck, and something in her expression softened slightly. "Mr. Hutchinson, we've been looking for you for a very long time. Your uncle left something behind before he died, something of national importance. And I believe the reason you're sleeping in this parking lot instead of your home has everything to do with what he discovered 37 years ago." She pulled out a tablet, swiped through several screens, and showed me a photograph. It was my Uncle Roy in military uniform, standing next to men I didn't recognize. But in the background, barely visible but definitely there, was a much younger Gordon Prewitt. "Your former father-in-law isn't just a retired banker, Mr. Hutchinson, and your uncle didn't die in an accident. The flag on your file was put there to protect you, to alert us if anyone ever tried to destroy your life the way they destroyed his. It appears the protection is 37 years late, but it's here now." My whole body went cold, and it wasn't from the desert night air. Everything made sense now. Gordon's immediate hostility when he learned who my uncle was, his systematic destruction of my business, his determination to separate me from his daughter. He hadn't been protecting his family's social status. He'd been protecting a secret that my uncle had died trying to expose. "Mr. Hutchinson," Agent Kincaid said, helping me to my feet, "we need to talk about what really happened in 1987, and why Gordon Prewitt has spent the last year making sure you ended up with nothing and no one to turn to. He thought if he destroyed you completely, broke you down enough, you'd never discover what your uncle left behind. He was wrong. 6 months earlier, I was living the American dream, or so I thought. My landscaping company, Green Valley Landscapes, had 12 employees and contracts with half the commercial properties in Tucson. I'd built it from nothing, starting with just a push mower and an old Chevy truck when I was 29. 20 years of 16-hour days, working through 100-degree summers and freezing desert winters had finally paid off. I had a reputation as the most reliable landscaper in the city, the guy who showed up when he said he would and delivered quality every single time. Renata and I had been married for 24 years. We'd raised 2 beautiful kids in our 4-bedroom house in the Catalina foothills, complete with the white stucco walls and red tile roof that screamed successful middle-class Arizona family. Austin was 22, finishing his business degree at Arizona State, and Brianna was 19, in her second year of nursing school. They were good kids, smart and hardworking, everything a father could want. But there was always tension with Renata's family. From day one, Gordon Prewitt made it clear I wasn't what he'd envisioned for his only daughter. "A landscaper," he'd said when Renata first introduced me at their country club. He'd looked at my calloused hands when we shook, and I saw him mentally calculating my worth and finding me lacking. How interesting. Gordon was old Scottsdale money, the kind of man who wore golf shirts that cost more than my workers made in a day. He'd been senior vice president at Desert Financial Bank for 30 years, moving money around like chess pieces while guys like me moved earth and planted trees. His wife, Marlene, was worse in her own way, with her fake smile and constant reminders of what Renata could have had. "Dr. Brennan's son just bought a house in Paradise Valley," Marlene would say at family dinners, passing the asparagus with practiced elegance. 8,000 square feet. His cardiology practice is doing so well. Remember when he took you to prom, Renata? I'd learned to tune it out over the years, focusing on cutting my steak while Gordon launched into his weekly lecture about investment portfolios and market predictions. Travis, Renata's younger brother, would smirk from across the table, enjoying the show. He'd inherited his father's arrogance along with his real estate development company, another gift that fell into his lap without a single blister or drop of sweat. "Dad built something from nothing," Austin would say, defending me with the fierce loyalty of a son who'd spent summers working on my crews. "He employs 12 people. He's a job creator." "Anyone can cut grass, Austin," Gordon would reply, swirling his wine. "It takes vision to build real wealth. Your father works in his business, not on it. There's a ceiling to how far manual labor can take a man." But I had my pride. Every commercial property I maintained, every perfectly manicured lawn and precisely trimmed hedge represented something I'd earned with my own 2 hands. No inheritance, no family connections, no good old boy network. Just Dale Hutchinson and his willingness to outwork everyone else. Renata used to defend me too, at least in the early years. "Dale's a good man, Daddy," she'd say. "He takes care of his family. Isn't that what matters?" "There's taking care of a family, and then there's providing the life they deserve," Gordon would answer, his gray eyes cold as January. "You could have had so much more, sweetheart." The strange thing was, our life was good. We took vacations to San Diego every summer, had 2 reliable cars in the garage, and never worried about paying bills. I coached Austin's Little League team for 10 years and never missed one of Brianna's dance recitals. We had friends, barbecues on weekends, date nights at local restaurants where the owners knew our names. It was a real life, a solid life, built on honest work. But Gordon had planted seeds of doubt in Renata's mind, watering them with constant comments about what she was missing. Every family gathering became an exercise in subtle humiliation. He'd introduce me to his golf buddies as Renata's husband. He does lawn work. The same way you'd mention someone had a drinking problem. Marlene would seat me at the far end of the table during holiday dinners, physically placing me on the periphery of their family. The last normal day of my life was a Thursday in March. I'd just landed a contract to maintain the grounds at a new medical complex, my biggest deal ever. I came home with champagne, ready to celebrate. Instead, I found Renata sitting at our kitchen table with her parents, papers spread out in front of her. Gordon looked up at me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Victory. "Dale," Renata said, her voice strange and formal. "We need to talk about our future." Everything started unraveling the day Gordon retired from his position as senior vice president at Desert Financial Bank. It was supposed to be a celebration, his golden years finally beginning after 4 decades of moving money through the desert economy. But retirement gave him something dangerous. Time and purpose focused entirely on fixing his daughter's life. He began showing up at Renata's real estate office every morning with coffee and poison. "You're 47 years old, living beneath your potential," he'd tell her while reviewing her listings. "Look at these properties you're showing. Starter homes and rental units. You should be selling estates in Paradise Valley, not 3 bedrooms in Tempe." The sabotage started subtly. First, Travis called me into his downtown Phoenix office. He owned 7 strip malls across the valley, and Green Valley Landscapes maintained all of them. It was 30% of my annual revenue. Steady money I could count on. "Dale, nothing personal," he said, not meeting my eyes as he slid the termination notice across his glass desk. "Found a company that can do it for 20% less. You understand, it's just business." 20% less? I stood up, knowing exactly what this was about. "Travis, we've worked together for 8 years. My guys know every sprinkler head on your properties. Decisions made," he said, already checking his phone. "They start Monday." I lost $300,000 in annual contracts in one conversation. But that was just the opening move. Gordon's banking connections ran deep, and within 2 weeks my business line of credit was frozen for routine review. Desert Financial Bank had been my lender for 15 years, never missed a payment, perfect record. "I don't understand," I told the branch manager. "I've got payroll due Friday." "These reviews are standard procedure, Mr. Hutchinson. Should be resolved in 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. I had 12 employees depending on paychecks, families to feed. I emptied my personal savings to cover 2 payrolls, maxed out credit cards for the 3rd, but by week 4, I had to start letting people go. "Miguel, I'm so sorry," I told my foreman, who'd been with me 8 years. "As soon as this banking mess gets sorted, you're my first call." "It's not your fault, boss," he said, but I saw the worry in his eyes. He had 3 kids and a mortgage. Meanwhile, Gordon was working on Renata with surgical precision. He'd bring by real estate listings for million-dollar homes, casually mentioning how her friend Jennifer had just married a commercial developer. "Remember Nathan Wolcott from the country club?" he'd say. "His construction company just got the airport expansion contract. He asked about you the other day. Recently divorced, you know." Renata started coming home later, skipping dinners, avoiding conversations. She'd stopped wearing her wedding ring, claiming it interfered with her typing. When I confronted her about it, she turned cold. "Maybe Daddy's right," she said. "I've been thinking about this for years, Dale. You're a good man, but you'll never be good enough for this family. Look at our friends. Look at their lives. We're stuck in the same place we were 10 years ago." "Stuck? We're raising 2 great kids. We own our home. We take vacations. What more do you want?" "More," she said simply. "I want more." The divorce papers were filed 2 weeks later. The prenup Gordon had insisted on before our wedding was ironclad. He'd paid for the lawyer back then, told me it was just smart business to protect both parties. Now, I understood it was a trap set 24 years ago, waiting to spring. Without the business income and with my credit frozen, I couldn't afford a decent lawyer. Renata got the house, both cars, and primary custody. I got 72 hours to move out and supervised visitation rights that Gordon's lawyer friend made sure were humiliating in their restrictions. "Dad, why can't you just come home?" Brianna asked during one of our coffee shop visits, Renata waiting in the car outside. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Your mom and I just need some space." But Gordon wasn't done. He made sure every commercial property owner in his network knew that Green Valley Landscapes was unreliable and having financial difficulties. My remaining contracts evaporated. Within 4 months, I went from successful business owner to sleeping in my truck, showering at the YMCA, and moving between parking lots to avoid police attention. The final humiliation came when I confronted Gordon outside his country club. "You did this," I said. "You destroyed my life." He didn't even pretend to deny it. "I told you, 24 years ago you'd never be good enough for my daughter. Some men are meant to rise, Dale. Others are meant to maintain their lawns. You should have stayed in your place." "My place? I built a business. I raised a family. You played in dirt," he said, adjusting his golf glove. "And now you're back where you belong. In the gutter." That night in the Walmart parking lot, when Officer Valdez ran my license, I expected another ticket I couldn't pay, maybe even jail time for the accumulated fines. I was ready to give up entirely. 3 weeks earlier, I sat in my truck with my father's old revolver in my lap, wondering if everyone would be better off without me. The only thing that stopped me was thinking about Austin and Brianna finding out their father had quit on them. But when Valdez mentioned the federal flag from 1987, something clicked in my memory like a key turning in a rusty lock. 1987? I asked, my mind racing through old memories. "Officer, I was 17 in 1987. I've never even had a speeding ticket before this year." Valdez looked at his computer screen again, scrolling through information I couldn't see. "Sir, this flag is connected to a Roy Hutchinson. Relation?" "My Uncle Roy." The name hit me like ice water. He'd died in August 1987, leaving me his beat-up Chevy truck, the same truck I'd used to start my landscaping business. But Uncle Roy had always been mysterious about his work, deflecting questions with vague comments about serving his country in ways most folks wouldn't understand. "He was my uncle," I said slowly. Pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed starting to form. "Died in a car accident that year. Single vehicle, hit a tree on a straight road." "Mr. Hutchinson, I need to make a call," Valdez said, stepping away from my truck but keeping me in sight. I watched him speak urgently into his phone, his free hand gesturing as he explained something. 20 minutes later, the black Suburban arrived. Agent Deborah Kincaid was nothing like the federal agents you see in movies. She was calm, methodical, and treated me with unexpected respect despite my current circumstances. "Dale Hutchinson? I'm Agent Kincaid with Homeland Security. We've been looking for Roy Hutchinson's next of kin for 37 years. She pulled out a tablet, entering passwords and navigating through secured screens. "Your uncle wasn't just military intelligence, Mr. Hutchinson. He was part of a classified operation that uncovered a major Soviet spy ring operating through American financial institutions in the 1980s. Soviet spies in Arizona? Not just Arizona, nationwide. They were using banks to launder money and steal financial intelligence. Your uncle identified the network, documented everything. He was 2 days away from testifying to a federal grand jury when he died in that accident. She handed me the tablet, showing declassified documents with heavy black redactions. But what remained visible made my blood run cold. Photos of bank executives meeting with known Soviet operatives, financial records showing suspicious transfers, and there, in a list of suspected but never proven collaborators, was a name that jumped off the screen: Garrett Prewitt, Gordon's father. "Your uncle died before he could testify," Agent Kincaid explained. "But he was smart. He knew they might come for him, so he hid evidence somewhere. The flag on your file was to alert us if any of his family ever surfaced in the system, especially if they were in distress. The theory was that if the network was still active, they might try to neutralize any potential threats." "You think Gordon knew about this?" I asked, though the answer was already forming in my mind. "Mr. Hutchinson, when did Gordon Prewitt first learn you were Roy Hutchinson's nephew?" I thought back, remembering a dinner party 5 years into our marriage. Gordon's father, Garrett, was still alive then, in his 80s. When Renata mentioned my uncle had left me my first truck, Garrett had gone pale. "Roy Hutchinson from Fort Huachuca?" he'd asked. When I confirmed it, he'd whispered something urgently to Gordon, who'd looked at me differently from that moment on. "About 19 years ago," I said. "His father was still alive. They both acted strange when they found out." Agent Kincaid nodded, like this confirmed something. "We believe Gordon has spent years trying to find out what you might know or what Roy might have left you. When he couldn't find anything, he decided to destroy you instead, make sure you'd never be in a position to discover anything." "But I don't know anything. Uncle Roy never told me about any of this." "That's what we need to find out. Your uncle was brilliant at hiding things in plain sight. He left you his truck for a reason, but there's something else, something he hid that we've never been able to find. We think Gordon's recent escalation, this systematic destruction of your life, means he believes you're close to finding it, even if you don't know it yourself." She stood up, offering me her hand. "Mr. Hutchinson, we need your help. Help us find what your uncle hid, and we'll help you get your life back. More importantly, we'll expose what Gordon Prewitt and his family have been hiding for 40 years. For the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than despair. It was purpose, mixed with the growing realization that my uncle had been trying to protect me all along, even from beyond the grave. The next morning, Agent Kincaid and I drove to my father's house in Phoenix. Dad lived in the same ranch-style home where I'd grown up, still maintaining it perfectly despite being 74. He'd kept Uncle Roy's belongings in storage all these years, boxes stacked in the garage that I'd never bothered to examine. "Roy was paranoid those last few months," Dad said, pulling dusty boxes from metal shelving. "Kept saying someone was following him, tapping his phone. I thought it was the stress from his government work. We spent 3 hours going through everything: military uniforms, old photographs, letters from his army days. Then, in a battered army footlocker, Agent Kincaid found something unusual. The bottom seemed too shallow compared to the exterior depth. "There's a false bottom here," she said, running her fingers along the edges. She pressed a corner and a panel popped up, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside were microfiche slides, the old kind libraries used to use, along with a leather journal wrapped in plastic. Agent Kincaid held the first slide up to the light, and even from where I stood, I could see they were bank documents. "This is it," she breathed, her professional composure cracking. "Your uncle documented everything: financial transfers, meeting notes, photographs." She set up a portable microfiche reader from her vehicle, and we huddled around it in Dad's kitchen. The documents were damning. Garrett Prewitt hadn't just been a suspected collaborator. He'd been a key player, using his position at Desert Financial Bank to move Soviet money through legitimate businesses. The amounts were staggering. Millions of dollars flowing through accounts, funding intelligence operations across the Southwest. Then she showed me a photograph from 1986 that made everything clear. It showed a young Gordon Prewitt, probably 30 years old, shaking hands with a man Agent Kincaid identified as Dmitry Volkov, a known Soviet intelligence officer. In the background, Garrett Prewitt watched approvingly. Another photo showed Gordon at a banking conference in Mexico City, exchanging briefcases with the same man. Gordon wasn't just protecting his father's reputation, Agent Kincaid explained. He was an active participant. When his father retired, Gordon took over the network, modernizing it for the post-Soviet era. They shifted from espionage to money laundering for Russian oligarchs. The journal contained my uncle's handwritten notes, detailed observations of the Prewitt family's activities. One entry from July 1987 stood out, "They know I'm onto them." Garrett Prewitt called my commanding officer, trying to get me transferred. "I've made copies of everything. If something happens to me, my nephew Dale will inherit more than just my truck. The truth has a way of surfacing, even if it takes decades." "We need to move fast," Agent Kincaid said, already on her phone. "If Gordon destroyed your life this systematically, he's still protecting active operations." Within 4 hours, federal agents had warrants for Gordon's homes, offices, and bank records. I watched from Agent Kincaid's vehicle as they raided his Scottsdale mansion. Gordon was led out in handcuffs, his face a mask of shock and rage. When he saw me, his expression shifted to pure hatred. "You knew," he shouted as they put him in the federal vehicle. "You've always known." "No, Gordon," I called back. "I didn't know anything. You destroyed my life because of your paranoia. You created your own downfall." The investigation exploded from there. Travis's real estate empire was built on laundered money. Desert Financial Bank's executive board was compromised. 40 years of financial crimes unraveled in weeks. The federal government found over $300 million in hidden accounts, properties purchased with illegal funds, and a network that stretched from Phoenix to Moscow. My phone rang as we watched the FBI carry boxes from Gordon's house. It was Austin. "Dad, what's happening?" "Mom's hysterical. Federal agents are at Grandpa's house. The news is saying something about Russian money laundering. They're saying you're involved somehow." "I'm not involved the way they think, son. Your grandfather has been hiding something terrible for 40 years. He destroyed our family to protect his crimes." "Mom wants to talk to you," Austin said. I heard muffled voices, then Renata came on the line. "Dale, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. My father told me you were holding me back, that you were beneath us. But it was all lies, wasn't it? He was terrified of you. Not of me, Renata, of the truth my uncle left behind." She was crying now, the kind of deep, shaking sobs I'd only heard once before, when her mother had cancer. "I threw away our marriage for a lie. I let him poison me against you. Dale, our whole life was real, and I destroyed it for his approval." Agent Kincaid tapped my shoulder, showing me her tablet. The government had just frozen over $50 million in Prewitt family assets. My father-in-law's empire, built on blood and betrayal, had collapsed in a single day. Gordon Prewitt was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for financial crimes spanning 4 decades. The judge called it one of the most extensive money laundering operations ever uncovered in Arizona. Travis got 5 years and lost his real estate licenses in 7 states. Marlene, cleared of direct involvement but devastated by the shame, moved to Maine to live with her sister. She never spoke to me again, not even to apologize. Desert Financial Bank faced federal oversight and paid $90 million in fines for institutional failures. 23 executives were indicted. The scandal made national news for weeks, with reporters calling it the Prewitt Network, and tracing connections to Russian oligarchs who'd been using the American Southwest as their personal washing machine for dirty money. The government's witness protection program offered me a substantial reward for the recovered documents, $2 million, plus another $1 million from the seized assets as restitution for the deliberate destruction of my business. It wasn't about the money, though that certainly helped. It was about vindication. Every person who'd watched Gordon humiliate me at those country club dinners now knew the truth. The man who'd called me dirt under his fingernails was heading to federal prison in shackles. I used the reward money to rebuild Green Valley landscapes, but this time I did it right. I hired back Miguel and my old crew, giving them equity stakes in the company. We're bigger now than before, with contracts Gordon's influence can no longer touch. The medical complex that had canceled our contract during Gordon's campaign against me. They called begging us to come back. I charged them double. "Dad, you were never not good enough," Brianna told me over dinner 6 months later, after Gordon's sentencing. "They were the ones not good enough for you. Grandpa was a criminal hiding behind his money." Austin changed his major from business to criminal justice, inspired by Agent Kincaid and the investigation. "I want to catch the Gordon Prewitts of the world, Dad," he told me. "The ones who think they're untouchable because they wear expensive suits and belong to the right clubs." Renata and I didn't reconcile. Too much damage had been done, too many cruel words spoken, too much trust shattered, but we found a way to be civil for our kids' sake. She admitted her father had been feeding her lies for years, slowly poisoning her against me like arsenic in small doses. "He made me believe I deserved better," she said during our final conversation about the marriage. "He convinced me that your lack of ambition was holding me back. But Dale, what I had with you was already better than anything his world could offer. I traded real love for fool's gold." She sold the house and moved to a small apartment in Tempe, working to rebuild her real estate career without her father's connections. The last I heard, she was doing well, focusing on helping young families find their first homes instead of chasing luxury listings. Officer Ramon Valdez and I became unlikely friends. We meet for beer once a month at a sports bar downtown. "You know, Mr. Hutchinson," he said one evening, "that night I pulled you over, I almost didn't run your license. Something told me to check. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was something else. That something else might have been Uncle Roy watching over me. I'll never know for sure, but I like to think he was waiting all those years for the right moment, for justice to finally come calling. He died protecting America from enemies hidden in plain sight, and 37 years later, his nephew finished the job. I still drive trucks, still work with my hands, still come home covered in honest dirt, but now I know the truth. Gordon Prewitt didn't try to destroy me because I wasn't good enough. He tried to destroy me because he feared I might be exactly good enough to expose what his family really was. The landscaper he mocked for playing in dirt had been sitting on top of buried treasure all along, the kind that could bring down kingdoms built on lies. My story isn't about revenge or even justice, really. It's about truth having patience, about how secrets buried in the desert have a way of surfacing when the time is right. It's about understanding that sometimes the people who tell you you're not good enough are really just terrified that you might be better than them in every way that matters. The men who maintain the lawns, who build with their hands, who earn their calluses and wear their sweat with pride, we're the backbone of this country. And sometimes we're also the ones who end up keeping America clean in ways nobody expects. If you found value in this story, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't measured by someone else's standards. Drop a comment below about a time when someone underestimated you, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Thank you for listening, and remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth.